Welcome back. Last Thursday, Jeff McAdam and I were live from the Coliseum for the Rams game. We spoke to Miles McPherson, who played for the Rams and the Chargers. After getting into drugs and alcohol, he turned his life around, became a pastor, and started the Rock Church in San Diego. Now, at 58 years old, he's written a book called The Third Option: Hope for a Racially Divided Nation.
I grew up in a diverse family in a black neighborhood, going to school in a white neighborhood, and dealt with racism in both neighborhoods. Then started playing football and realized we can get along because our teams were always diverse. Now I'm a pastor of a church in San Diego called the Rock Church, about 20,000 people every week, and it is a united nation. So I saw the unity in our church and realized that people can get along. So I wanted to write this book to give people solutions on how to get along because we have such a divisive and divided culture right now.
So what's option 1 and 2, and then why is this called third option?
In every race confrontation or conversation, it's about us versus them. And people in culture feel like I got to pick a side. And a lot of times a lot of pressure. And, you know, if I'm on this side, I got to be against that side. The third option is that we honor what we have in common. So instead of looking at you and looking at and focusing on what's different, how can I focus on what's similar? Because we have more similarities than differences. And this book is to give people tools and resources and answers, solutions on how we can honor each other and see each other as equals. One of the things I learned writing this book that was a big aha for me is that you can be racially offensive and not be a racist. Now, there are people who are racist, don't get me wrong, but most of us will say we're not. However, we offend people by things we say, sometimes out of nervousness, sometimes out of ignorance, sometimes out of fear, but we're not necessarily maliciously trying to hurt them. And so if you can accept that you could be racially offensive, this book is a good tool for you to say, what are those things I'm doing? Because if you can't separate being racially offensive from being racist, you will never accept that you're offensive. And so when someone tells you offended me, you'll say, no, I didn't, because I'm not a racist. But yes, you did, but it may not be intentional.
Right. So what are those tools and what are the solutions that you're talking about?
Very good. One is to acknowledge your blind spots, things you're blind to being blind about. I may say something to you, I don't even know it's offensive. Like when someone said to me once, they didn't see my color. Now, I knew in their mind they were thinking they were trying to build a bridge.
Right.
But what they were doing was they erased everything that I've experienced. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. They erased everything I experienced. And I said, well, that's offensive to me. And they said, well, I don't mean it offensive. Well, it was offensive to me. So that was a blind spot. And I think we have to realize that we all have blind spots because we see the world through our lens based on how we grew up. But how we grew up is only 1/6 billionth of the perspective in the world. Another way is renaming people. We have titles we give people. We have titles we give white people, black people, Hispanic people, Latinos. We got all those derogatory titles or labels. When you label someone less than neighbor or brother or sister, you dehumanize them. You know, the greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. If you're not my neighbor, I don't need to love you. So I give you another title. So if we label everybody my neighbor, my brother, my sister, if you're my neighbor, then I'm going to treat you that way. But if you're something less than that and I dehumanize you, then I'm okay with accepting you being mistreated.
It's your justification.
Right, exactly. So we got to rename people our neighbor.
You're onto something good here. Look forward to reading the rest of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the inset. It says we are all created in God's image. I love that.
No doubt.
Well, thank you so much, Miles. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure, my pleasure. God bless you.
58. He's going to give me beauty secrets after this, too.
I can take some tips.
Yeah, right.
It was incredible. He's 58 years old and looks amazing. You can pick up his book at Barnes & Nobles or Amazon or tweet him at Miles McPherson. So